Welcome everybody. Tonight we have a crazy case for you. So get your coffee, get your pop, bottle of vodka, whatever your choice is. Get it now because you're not going to want to get up. Also, while you're up, grab a diaper if you're not already wearing one. I may or may not be already wearing one, but that's my business. But because you are going to shit your pants. This is a crazy story. Okay, let's get right into it. So our victim, one of our victims in this case tonight, the main victim, Patricia Booher, she was a young girl who grew up in Olena, Ohio, which is not far from New London, Ohio, where I grew up. Patricia was, by all accounts, a very shy girl, kind of had trouble making friends in school. She just kind of kept to herself. She is, I guess, what they would have called developmentally delayed a little bit. She did go to a vocational school for part of high school out at a place called Ehovie, where she was in some special classes there. Patricia did graduate high school. After high school, she, I believe, moved to Sandusky, Ohio, and there she was selling Avon, which, if you're not familiar with that is, it's makeup line. She'd go door to door selling that or whatever. And she lived in this apartment complex there, and she had met a man that she will regret meeting. This guy, he was a piece of crap, and you'll see why. His name is Hayward Bissell. Now this man, let's talk about his size for a minute, okay? I'm 4'10", midget. This man stood 6'4", 400 pounds. I mean, he was a beast of a man. Okay, just even if he was a nice guy, he'd still be intimidating. But this man was not a nice man. Hayward, he grew up in New London, Ohio, which is the town I'm from. And he was, by all accounts, from family and friends that have made statements about him, he was quite the bully in school. He was always in trouble. Started doing drugs when he was 12 years old. Anytime he could find a fist fight, he was right in the middle of it. Just always getting in trouble and bullying people. Hayward, when he graduated from high school, he ended up joining the Army. And oddly enough, as much as Hayward was against authority and, you know, the type of person he was, he absolutely excelled in the military. He was an exceptional soldier, they said. Hayward, I believe, let's see, it was 1979, I think, when he joined the Army. I think he did right around 10 years in the military. That's how much he enjoyed it. Stayed out of trouble for the most part. I didn't really read anything that stood out anyway with Hayward while he was in the military. So Hayward gets honorably discharged in 1989, and he comes back to Ohio, and he's living in a small town called Greenwich, which is, I guess you could kind of make a triangle. You got New London, you got Olena, where Booher grew up, and then you have New London. So this is where he came to, and he ended up meeting his first wife there, and I believe her name was Sherry Brown, which he had one child with. Was not a very long marriage. He was very abusive to her, threatening her all the time, making statements like, if you leave me, I'll cut you up and I'll feed you to your mother. I mean, this guy was a fucking puke. He was disgusting. Just a bully of a man. So eventually Sherry got sick and tired of it, and she did file for divorce and left Hayward. But he still did stay involved in the child's life and had visitation with the child, which was a sad thing because he continued to harass her, from what I understand, and threaten her, throughout the whole time. After that, then he kind of just does his thing for a few years, and he's, out at the bars, and he's drinking, and he's getting in fights, and, just causing havoc. And during this time, some mental illness starts rearing its ugly head with Hayward. Now, I won't knock people with mental illness. I mean, it is what it is. But you're going to understand why I say that. This man used it to his advantage at times throughout his life. So Hayward starts doing things, like I said, like getting into these fights. He's standing in the grocery store, and the chief of police comes in one day, and Hayward just stares him down. Weird as can be, don't say a word. Chief's like, "Hey, Hayward, how are ya? How you doing?" Doesn't say a word. So Chief's like, all right, he's out of here. He goes back to the office. A few minutes later, Hayward comes walking in the police station, and he tells the chief, hey, evil just is taking me over. It's just taking me over. And he said, why do you feel that way, Hayward? And Hayward just responds, it's confidential. I mean, this man was bizarre. He had visual and auditory hallucinations. He would at times report that he sees blood spilled all over the road, or he was hearing voices. He believed that satellites was controlling his mind, his thoughts, and his alarm clock. Now, I understand what he's saying there, because I'm quite sure that something is controlling my alarm clock, because it goes off every morning. It's the most annoying thing, and it doesn't shut up until I get up and turn it off. I don't know. It's crazy. Anyway, so Hayward, during this time, being the size he is, he kind of went into security jobs. He worked at a place in Toledo, Ohio. In security, he worked in a factory called Fannie Farmer in Norwalk, Ohio. And then I believe he worked at McDonald's, I believe. I don't know if that was in security or flipping burgers, but either way it goes. So those are some of the little jobs that he was doing. Now, moving forward, Hayward ends up meeting another woman by the name of Teresa Goebel. And Teresa and him were not together long. I think within the first year, they ended up splitting, because he was also abusive to her, although she did not ever make police reports on it, never reported it. But people reported, that seeing him abusive towards her. Now, in one statement, she did say that he was abusive to her, but she wasn't afraid of him. Whatever that, maybe she was bigger than him. I don't know. He was an awful big man, but you never know. But she wasn't afraid of him, but he just was threatening and a kind of a bully. He also, she said, was very like a clean freak, kind of OCD with it, like very particular, and would go off if things were out of place at home. And she wasn't allowed to do the cleaning because, he just couldn't deal with stuff being, and that's a tough disease as well. So moving forward, Hayward and Teresa finally end up splitting because of that. And Now we get to when Hayward meets Patricia. So Hayward moves from Greenwich to, for a short time, he lived in a hotel in Norwalk, which was like a crack hotel, to be honest with you. It was one of those motels that you pay weekly, and it's just disgusting. But he had trouble with the landlord there. He just didn't get along with anyone. So he moves to Sandusky, and that's where him and Patricia cross paths. Now, they're living in the same apartment complex, and she's selling her Avon, and I don't know if he needed some new lipstick or what, but anyway, they met one day when she was out selling her Avon. And Patricia, being the type of person she was, naive, trusting, way too trusting, vulnerable, had only had one boyfriend in her entire life. By this time, she is 24 years old. This was 1999 when they met. She was 24 years old, and he was much older. He was 37, I believe, when they met. So Patricia was a very, very tiny girl. People reported saying that she looked like she was just a little girl because she was barely 100 pounds, soaking wet, and had very baby face, features. So anyway, these two get dating, and they're only dating for a few weeks when Patricia is telling people that she sees a future with Hayward, and they are gonna get married, and this is who she's gonna be with. But yet she did not bring Hayward home to meet the family like she typically would, in the past with a friend or the one boyfriend she had. So she and Hayward continue on their relationship. Now, this started, I believe, October of 1999. And immediately, I don't want to say immediately. Yeah, I'm going to say immediately. He becomes abusive with her. I think just because he knew he could, bully her, because that's what he did. That's what he was good at. Piece of shit. And, she was just too frail and naive to understand what was, going on at the time. So a little bit of time goes by. She ends up joining a group called the Friendship Club in Norwalk. She joins a church. She's trying to make friends, and some of her friends there know of Hayward because I guess he was stalking another girl that was in the Friendship Club at one time. He was just a puke. Nothing nice about this guy. So her friends were trying to warn her, and she just wouldn't listen. This is the guy, big beast of a guy I want to be with. So her and Hayward make plans to go down to Florida because Hayward's parents live down there. And so they made plans to go down there, and Patricia was really not too keen on the idea. And I think it was because she either sensed that this was getting bad or it was going to get worse, or she knew that something was up because she kept trying to get away from him eventually. The more he became abusive, she just kept trying to distance herself, and Hayward would just not let it happen. He went into manipulation mode, writing her a 3-page letter, trying to get her back, when she would try to leave him for a day. I don't know. Didn't work. She stayed with him. So finally, he convinces her in January to take this trip to Florida. So Hayward and her weird enough, they didn't pack a single thing with them to go on this trip. He had, at the time, he was driving a, I believe it was gold Lincoln Town car. So they, on January 22nd of 2000, Hayward and Patricia jump in the car and they take off. I might add too that Patricia had just found out she was pregnant as well, which only adds more sadness to this whole story. She had just found out and told her parents and everything. She was really excited. So anyway, they get in the car, they go, they're driving down to Florida, and, you know, this is January, it's freaking cold. They get down to Alabama, and this massive, massive ice storm hits, okay? And they're driving around, and they're kind of getting lost in this town, and Hayward starts acting more and more bizarre. He is getting behind cars. He's following them around town. He's parking in front of houses, and just sitting there. He's obviously has something going on in his mind, but I guess we really don't know if he's disclosing what's going on in his mind to Patricia or not, because she's not here to tell us, but he's just exhibiting some very, very bizarre behavior. So, at one point, there's a lady that, you know, in the middle of this ice storm, she lived down there in this town they were in, and she decides she's going to go check on her grandparents and make sure they have electricity and stuff, and crosses paths with this psychopath, and this is one of the cars he decides to follow. So what his intentions were, we're not sure. I kind of thought maybe he was out to rob somebody because they were running very low on money. They didn't have any food. They were going to sleep in the car that night, and 0 temperatures. So that's kind of what I was thinking. I don't know that for sure, but that makes sense to me. So anyway, he whips around. He follows this lady, and she notices that he's following her because he's following her really close. And so she gets to her house, and she whips in the driveway. She runs in the house and hollers for her husband, Kevin, and, you know, she slams the door, locks it, and says, you know, there's this car following me. They pulled in the driveway, and they're just sitting out there. So Kevin throws on his clothes. He goes running to the door, and he's looking out, and he's smart enough to write down the license plate number, and he noticed that it was an Ohio license plate. And, you know, these people are just sitting in the car, not doing anything, not getting out, not pulling out, not anything. So finally, Sue opens up the door, and she says, "Can I help you? What do you want?" And they didn't respond. And then she says it again, and he opens up the door and gets out, and he said, "We're lost." And then he gets back in the car, and then he pulls out of the driveway. I mean, weirdo. I don't know what that was about. So that was the beginning of him just really starting to act very bizarre on this trip. So the next situation we have is he is driving around looking for a place for them to sleep for the night. He pulls into a hotel. No, not to get a room, but just to park the car, and then that's where they slept that night. The next morning, they woke up, drove to a convenience store that was down the road, and they pull in there, and they literally sat there for about 6 hours waiting for this store to open, so he could go in and get something. So while the store opens up, he goes in. While he's in there, she stays in the car, and he is in there for a really long time. She doesn't know what he's doing. I guess she gets kind of antsy. And she gets up, and it's on CCTV. You see her go in the store, and she's in there for a few minutes. She starts to come out of the store, and she pauses. And it's almost like she just had this thought, do I stay here with other people around? Do I tell somebody? Or do I go back to the car? And she made the fatal decision to walk out that door from the convenience store and get back into Hayward's car. So Patricia is sitting there, and she's waiting for Hayward to come out. And Hayward finally comes out. He gets in the car. And guys, this is where I said you're going to need your diaper, because it is just brutal. He gets back in the car. He shuts the door. And let me remind you, it is an ice storm in Georgia. And it's, or Alabama, I'm sorry. It's right on the border, Alabama and Georgia. So if I mix those up, I apologize. But anyway, so the windows are kind of frosty, covered in ice. So visibility in and out of the car is not real good with them sitting there. And he gets in, and he starts accusing Patricia of being a secret agent and, controlling his mind with satellites. And, he's being very bizarre, saying these very bizarre things. And then he stops, and he looks at her, and he says, "Where are we?" And she turns to him, and she said, "Well, Hayward, I think we're in Georgia." Hayward reaches for the back seat, pulls a knife out that he had hidden, reaches over, and he slices her throat out of nowhere, from ear to ear. After he does this, he proceeds to stab her in the neck 4 times. He stabs her in the eyes and in the sinus area up to 30 times. Yes. All while sitting in the parking lot of a convenience store. And I mean, I can't imagine. I'm just there trying to get my morning coffee, a pack of cigarettes, and dude's out here hacking up a woman in his car, and nobody's even noticing, okay, yet. So, a couple of guys come strolling by the car, and they were close enough that they could kind of see in the car, but not quite realize or understand what they're looking at. And Hayward grabs her head as the boys are walking by, and he pulls her up by her hair, like he was showing them, look what I just did, And I guess one of the guys had mentioned to the other, she's deader than hell. Kind of joking, like maybe they thought she was drunk or something. I don't know. I probably couldn't see the blood and all that through the windows being all iced up, but yeah. So, and that's not even the worst of it, guys. It's kind of foggy right here. Down the road during the investigation, they're not quite sure where this part of the mutilation to her body happens. Yes, more mutilation to her body. They don't know if he did it there in the parking lot, or in some reports they say that they think that he drove her out to a dirt road nearby, where I am just going to tell you, this is gruesome, warning. He proceeds to cut off her right hand from the wrist down. He cuts off her left leg. This is all in the car. I mean, imagine the scene in this car. There has got to be blood just pooled. I mean, he's already cut her throat, stabbed her in the face 30-some times, the neck, cut off a hand, cut off a leg, okay? Then he rips out her esophagus. Yeah. But wait, that's not it. He wasn't quite done. He still had some free time on his hands, I guess, while he was checking his GPS of, how to get back on track to get to Florida. So he thought, well, I think I'll gut her too, because I, don't have anything better to do. He guts this poor woman. He removes her liver. He removes her stomach. He removes her heart. He removes her lungs. Okay? Remember all that. Just digest it for a minute. Yeah. Like I said, he's a puke. He's a sick, sick man, piece of shit that should not be living. Okay, so that's not the end of it. So, he gets back, gets done doing what he was doing with Patricia. He still has her over here, seatbelt on, buckled in, so she, I guess, doesn't get hit by the airbag if they get in an accident, keep her safe. So, he pulls on out of there, and he's going down the road, and all of a sudden, he rear ends another car because of the ice, or intentionally because he is creepy and keeps following these people too close. So the car pulls over to the side of the road, and Hayward follows behind. And initially the husband or the wife was driving, and the husband and wife both got out of the car at the same time. And the husband said, get back in the car and get the insurance information, whatnot. And he walks around the back of the truck, and he's getting ready to confront Hayward, and Hayward just bolts it. And he hits this man, and the man lands up on top the hood of the car, trying to hang on for dear life. He grabs a hold of the windshield wipers, and Hayward just guns it, and he is flying down this road as fast as he can. He's whipping around. All of a sudden, Hayward just does one of these, and he whips the car and throws the man off into the ditch. Now, the man, this poor man, his name is Don, had just had an accident a couple weeks prior. He's already got broken ribs. He's hurting. So now this idiot whips him off the car. He lands in the ditch. He lands on his knees, and he thinks he breaks his legs. He can't move. He's a hot mess. Wife comes running down to help him, and he says, no, get back up there on the road, flag somebody down, get some help, because this crazy is going to come back. And, imagine that. It reminds me of Jeepers Creepers, like that scary, creepy van, just, ugh. So anyway, no, that is not the end. So finally, Maniac just keeps on, he whips out of here, he takes off. Okay, he comes by along another house, right? And this woman, I believe their names are Sue and James, were in their house, minding their own business, right? They have 2 chocolate labs that both were outside at the time. And Sue was standing at the kitchen counter, and she was doing dishes, cleaning up, and she looks out the front window, and she sees a car across the street, and it's over there, and the hood's up on the car, and she just thinks, okay, didn't really think too much about it, but being out there in the country, she did keep an eye on the car. All of a sudden, she sees this man, big, huge, beastly man, walking up her driveway. And like I said, the 2 chocolate labs were outside, and he just keeps coming. The dogs, who were never aggressive, started to snarl and growl at him and bark at him, trying to warn the family that this man was coming. And he comes up, and Hayward, the man that lived there, James, comes to the door, and he says, "Can I help you?" And as soon as James opens the door, Hayward pulls out a knife and just sticks it right in his stomach. And immediately the dogs start attacking, like they're trying to defend their owner, right? And they're going at him, and he's slashing at him with his knives. And so I think he killed one of the dogs. There's still one coming at him. And then wife Sue is trying to reach through, and she's trying to get her husband back in and get this guy out. She's trying to pull the door shut, and he grabs a hold of her shirt, and he's trying to pull her out. And she finally, one of the dogs got a good latch onto Hayward and bit him. And he let go of Sue, and Sue had time to, get back in the door and shut and lock the door, saving her life. The sad thing was that both of these dogs lost their lives, and this sick piece of shit killed both dogs, and then he drugged them out back of their house, decapitated these dogs, and gutted both of them. I mean, what? I just don't have words for this. Whatever he is, he's the devil. So, he gets done there. She goes and Sue gets a shotgun. She's like, I've had it. And I'm blowing his head off. He's trying to get in the back door at this time. Sue pulls up the shotgun, threatens, to shoot him. He said, don't shoot, I'm leaving. About time. So, he leaves. He speeds off. So, he starts jetting down the road, okay, in this big old car. And, remember the scene a minute ago I was telling you about where the man got thrown into the ditch? Well, by this time, several cars had stopped to help this guy and, assist him until they could get 911 there, because, everything was slower than normal because of this horrible ice storm. So, neighbors were trying to assist, whatever. So, all of a sudden, as they're all standing around, they see this dreaded Jeepers Creepers car. Here we go. It's flying down the road just when they thought they were safe and, help was coming. No, who's coming? Hayward Bissell. He's bolting down the road in his big old car directly at them all while they're standing on the side of the road, and he smashes into a tractor that was sitting there on the side of the road that somebody drove up on to help. And he backs up and he just flies down the road, okay? Like, what in the fuck just happened? This guy just can't get enough. He just cannot be happy with the pain and suffering he's already caused everybody that he's come in contact with, okay? So, anyway, by this time, there has been multiple calls to the police department about weirdo following me, weirdo sitting outside my house, weirdo walking around the convenience store doing nothing for God only knows how long, weirdo in the parking lot doing something to somebody in a car. So many reports of just this weird-ass man running around this little town, right? So, finally, the cops end up setting up a roadblock, and here comes Hayward, okay? Here he comes. They're okay, we're going to stop this guy. No, he's not going to go down easy. He's got to put on a scene. He's got to put on a show. So he stops finally, and the cops are trying to, get out of the car. He won't get out. So these cops are trying to pull this big-ass man out of this vehicle. They can't do it, okay? And the car, he had it in, still in neutral or in drive. So the car was moving, and it was moving backwards, and Hayward's hanging half out of the car and his foot gets ran over and nothing. Like, he didn't even react that he just got ran over by a car. Like, this man is inhuman. I don't know what he is, but so they're struggling, they're fighting with him, and finally they get him stopped. They get the car stopped. They get him out of the car, get him down on the ground, and they notice there's a passenger. So the cops are like, "Get out! Step out of the car!" And as the cop gets closer, he realizes this lady ain't getting out of the car. She's missing a hand. She's covered in blood. Okay, so he gets closer. He opens up the car door. He sees her leg is gone. Okay. He sees she's mutilated. She's gutted. She's just a mess. Okay, so they start to search the car. They look in the back seat, and he had his knives laying on the floor in the back seat, all covered with blood. And on the floor in the back seat was a pile of her organs. He had kept all these, and her stomach and her liver and her heart, all of her organs were laying there on the floorboard of his car. I mean, how much more disgusting does it get? Well, it does. It gets more disgusting. I know. I've already filled my diaper twice. So anyway, they get this piece of shit wrangled, right? Okay, they get him in jail, take him down to jail or interview room, whatever. And here we go with this mental illness bullcrap, okay? Now, he starts really playing the, I'm so mentally ill, you know, that I can't possibly be, you know, responsible for what I've done. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Hayward and his using his mental illness diagnosis in the past to get out of trouble. He just, you know, he was okay until he did something wrong and knew he might sit a day in jail, and then all of a sudden he would go check himself in somewhere. Hayward had checked himself into 9 different mental facilities well over a dozen times, and each and every time they would put him on meds. He would behave, and then he'd get out on good behavior early. He'd get out of jail time. You know, he was always using this. And I don't doubt that the man wasn't sick. I mean, he obviously was not right. But to what magnitude, I don't know, because I think he really played a lot. So they get him in this interview room, and they're questioning him, and he's just saying all this bizarre stuff. I mean, just crazy talk. Talking about the satellites and the special agents, and he won't answer some questions because he says it's confidential. But he outright admitted that he did kill Patricia because she was a special agent. And, you know, she had it out for him, I guess. So there wasn't any question of who done it. So they throw him behind bars, right? And there are reports of him just being like a wild, caged animal. There were police that said this man was just too dangerous to even have around anyone else. They had him in his own cell with cameras on him at all times so that they could watch him. He would play in his feces. He would smear it. I mean, just was disgusting, okay? So, getting along to the trial. First trial was set for April 1st, 2001. And of course, he was going to plead insanity because that's what he did every time he was in trouble. And his defense was that he's too nuts to stand trial. So the judge had ordered him to be on 6 different medications in the jail, and he was forced to take those to see if they could get him to a good state to where he could continue on with the trial. From that point on, it was reported that he acted perfectly normal. At times would act out if somebody important was watching that he thought it might matter. But other than that, he acted completely normal. The next trial was set for October 1st of 2001, and the prosecutor really put on a good show and proved that a lot of this was an act and that he knew completely good and well what he was doing when he took Patricia's life that day. He ended up being convicted. He pled guilty, so family didn't have to go through a big trial, which was wonderful. And he was sentenced 14 years to life with a plea deal, which I don't know why he was offered a plea deal. So technically he could be paroled after 14 years. I was unable to find anything if he's still in prison to this day. We are praying that he is, because I'm pretty darn sure he would repeat again. So anyway, that is the conclusion of this case. I hope you guys really enjoyed it. I told you it was going to be a roller coaster, and I think it was. Okay, thanks for watching, everybody. Join me next time.